Good evening, everybody, and happy Sunday night to all of you out there. This is Unlock the Middle's Videocast Sunday night prime time opportunity to recognize things that are great in the vocation that we have chosen. My name is Dean Packard, and I'm the proud principal of Charlton Middle School in Charlton, Massachusetts. And alongside of me, I have my good friend and co-host of the multiple platforms that we do, Principal Chris Starcheski of Dudley Middle School in Dudley, Massachusetts. Chris, happy Sunday to you. Hope you had a great day. I heard through the grapevine you won a couple of baseball games. Well, not you. Your team won a couple of baseball games. So you get outside and have some fun, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, Dean. How are you today, man?
Fantastic. You know, Sunday nights are always fun for us.
It's awesome. You know why this Sunday night is great, Dean? Not because we won 2 baseball games as a team today, but because tomorrow is Patriots Day, and it's actually a vacation day for us on a Monday here in Massachusetts. We're entering into spring break, and we'll be working in the office for some time this week, but tomorrow is definitely an additional day of rest.
Well, we all need it. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot going on in our worlds right now, not only for us, but for our educators and our students. And when they can hit the pause button and just kind of refresh and recalibrate their minds, everybody, it's a win-win for everybody. We're looking forward to when we come back. Hey, we did have a great show on Saturday morning, though, if you missed it, Navigating Leadership. When we start talking about the topic of the week was dilemmas from our chair. And there are so many great takeaways from that. So if you hadn't had an opportunity to watch that, we pinned that on top of our Twitter feed. So take a look at that, because our guys from around the country that come join the roundtable, they do a great job. And to hear and validate that we're all in this game together, it's a win-win.
Absolutely. You know, Joe, Josh, AJ, working with us, just a tremendous crew and varied experiences and, world views that don't necessarily always line up, but the conversation's always rich, and it's great to learn from one another, especially as we're trying to work through some unsolvable situations.
Yep. And, we've been talking a lot about social emotional well-being and things of that nature. And tonight we're going to dig a little deeper into that, actually. And we're going to actually get right down into the weeds. And we're going to talk about, from a perspective of somebody who does this all the time in her business. So I'm looking forward to this conversation tonight, Chris.
Absolutely. Well, what do you say we bring our guest on in here, Dean, and let's get the show started?
Let's do it up. Let's go. Here we go.
All right, everybody out there in Unlock the Middle Land, Tabatha Marden. She is a wife, a mom, a certified emotional intelligence practitioner, and leadership coach. Social emotional learning is her bag. She's got a mental health advocacy role in her background, speech and language technician, and she's the founder of the Thrive and EQ program. Due to the epidemic, stress and anxiety being at its all-time high in the world, Tabatha is passionate about helping people practice principles of emotional intelligence, have a better relationship with their emotions, stress less, feel connected, and experience more happiness. She's dedicated to supporting leaders, parents, students, and organizations as they work to integrate SEL into their practices, schools, homes, and communities. She's known for her authentic, no-nonsense approach. Model 5 steps to rock the F word. That F word is feelings, everybody. Feelings and the ability to connect with them and create meaningful change in individuals' lives. Through her Thrive and EQ program, Tabatha utilizes the research-proven methodology of EQ through one-on-one and group coaching, training, and professional development, workshops, speaking events, and EQ assessments. Drawing from a professional experience working in the field of speech therapy in schools with her life experience of raising 4 children, Tabatha created a signature approach to help her clients create and enjoy sustainability, emotional freedom in business, school, and in life. She's from Arizona, but she's here on the show with us tonight. I don't see her husband or her 4 children in the background, but I know that they're going to be enjoying the replay of this. Tabatha, how are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Welcome aboard.
Excited too.
We're glad to have you as well. I think I was caught on relationships, stress less, and happiness, because those are 3 key ingredients for all of us to be successful in our day-to-day routine. So welcome aboard, and we're glad you're spending some time with us tonight. So let's jump right into this, Chris, if we could. Let's talk a little bit about, Tabatha, if we could, the myths of social emotional learning and the research and why it's proven to improve mental health, behavior, academics, and the love of learning.
Yeah, well, emotional intelligence is being smarter with our feelings. So it's being able to like cope with stress, which a lot of us have right now, and not like push away those feelings. So it's really being able to just have a better relationship with our emotions, and that helps us connect with the people we love, our students, and show up to difficult emotions and be able to work through the discomfort of them. So it's needed more than ever right now.
So when you talk about the emotional roller coaster for kids, what grade levels do you really work with yourself from the position that from your lens right now? Because I know it must differ from kindergarten all the way up to high school and what it looks like and strategies on how to make kids feel more comfortable within themselves.
Yeah, right now I work with all ages. So, starting from kindergarten through 12th grade. And I actually work with young adults as well. So, yeah.
As we sit down and we think about the social emotional learning and emotional intelligence, in public schools we get a lot of guidance from the organization Castle, which is kind of the standard go-to kind of gold standard, if you will, for social emotional learning. Can you talk a little bit about the 5 skills of SEL in their application towards EQ?
Yeah, so all my trainings, I always align everything with CASEL's 5 skills. So there's self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. So those 5 skills are principles of emotional intelligence. So they are the skills that adults acquire and apply, knowledge and attitudes and skills necessary to understand and manage our emotions, as well as set and achieve, positive goals, feel and show empathy, establish and maintain relationships, and make responsible decisions. So, self-awareness is just learning and identifying our emotions as well as other people that are around us emotions, our strengths. And then you have, self-management where you can actually manage your emotions in healthy ways, goal setting. And then you have like social awareness, and that's just like really practicing empathy for yourself and others. Relationship goals, that's so important for like teamwork. Needed like for us educators, and communication. And then you have responsible decision making, and that's just really identifying how our emotions drive our behavior, how we can be in control over our thoughts, feelings, and behavior. So with them, oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead. My mind's thinking, but go ahead.
Yeah, so emotional intelligence, it's about being smarter with your feelings and using all of those 5 skills. So it's using your thinking brain and your feeling brain together to make the best possible decisions. So that's where I always say IQ meets EQ better together. So the thing about blending both sides of our brain, our thinking brain and our emotional brain, we naturally as humans don't integrate both sides of our brain. So people on the cognitive side, they really tend to focus just on like rational data, and they leave emotions out. So that can result in hurting people's feelings. And then people on the emotional side, they just tend to focus on their feelings, and they leave their problem solving brain out. Their problem solving, critical skills out. And so what happens is when we're only using one side of the brain and not integrating both and really practicing how to use both, we are easily activated with that stress response center in the brain, commonly known as the 3 Fs, that fight, flight, freeze response. So when we're stressed, our brain is activated and it prepares our body to fight, which you'll see in like your behavior. You're yelling or you're fighting or you're emotional eating. Flight, you're storming out of the room, you push away emotions, you bury emotions. Or freeze, you do the silent treatment. You do nothing and you don't move. And I always like to really help people understand like how the brain works under stress and why we are so easily in those 3 F's, and also how to have awareness that when we're stressed, which one of those 3 F's that we fall in, and then that's when we can develop some coping tools to have stress but not get hijacked by those 3 F's. So how the brain works is, the amygdala, that's part of our brain responsible for triggering the stress response center. So it detects like fear and when we're stressed. So it's really meant to protect us and keep us safe. But when we're stressed, it prepares us for emergency events and acts very fast. And that's when our body prepares to fight, flight, or freeze. And in a 911 situation, it's awesome. We want to run, we want to protect ourselves, we want to fight. But in the modern day society, our brain can't detect if we're just, stressed over like COVID, or, for kids, like, relationship problems, they got broken up with their girlfriend or something like that, or test anxiety. It automatically prepares them for those 3 F's. So emotional intelligence, we help people practice how to integrate both sides of the brain so you can have a better relationship with all emotions and not be hijacked by those 3 F's. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Totally does.
I'm thinking to myself, we need to do a whole show on the brain, Chris, because I think that, sometimes in education, I don't think that everybody stops and understands the metacognition, of learning to learn, and how the brain interacts. That is a huge platform. But I'm hearing all of this, and I'm seeing so many moving parts to the balance of kids, adults, everybody out there. Let's shift gears for a second and talk about positive academic mindset and how creating a social, emotional intelligence school culture can be beneficial for the academics of kids.
Well, because, our brain just doesn't focus or learn when we're stressed. We need to feel safe, or, so when kids don't have like a safe environment, they don't feel connected to their school or their teachers, their brain is not going to learn. They're not going to function. And so that's why it's more important to develop and integrate the 5 skills in your classroom so kids can have a safe environment. And that's by learning about emotions, talking about emotions in a comfortable way. I always call it like going back to Little House on the Prairie days, where you're talking about emotions like you're talking about what's for dinner, So the 5 skills is just really learning, like, how can we integrate those skills in the classroom? And IQ meets EQ, so academically in all of our subjects. And there's many ways that we can do that, and I can share some of those with you today. But it's really getting teachers to learn also that these skills we have to learn and model ourselves and believe in them in order to really help our kids be able to practice them.
Could you talk just about a couple of integrated ways in which you can do this in a classroom? Because that intrigues me. So how can you help a teacher understand to get this all implemented?
Yeah, so one of the ways is just, what I always try to do is, have like feeling words, have kids start learning to name their emotions. You can do like an emotion check-in when kids come in and ask them like how they're feeling. And you can have like posters up with feeling words on them. And I always provide in my trainings teachers with these activities, but you can do emotion check-ins, and that's how you are able to gauge how kids are feeling and help them expand their emotional literacy, because just by naming your emotions, that decreases a lot of your stress. And teaching kids how they feel so they can start understanding like, okay, I feel anxious, and then help them explore 3 different ways that, they won't feel anxious today. So it's just really getting them to communicate better. So just having feeling words, posters. I personally use the zone of regulation curriculum because do you guys use that? Are familiar with it?
Yep, sure. Yellow.
Yeah.
Yep.
So those visuals are amazing because it shows like as humans, you're going to be sad, you're going to be happy, you're going to be in one of those zones. So if you have those visuals, you can even just use those 4 zones in your classroom and do an emotion check-in. What zone are you in today? And then, the goal obviously is not to go in that red zone, but, we want to have some coping tools and have some strategies to avoid that. But that's a great curriculum to integrate in your classroom as well, because you can have them, you can do the check-ins using those zones. And if you see a lot of people in the red zone, you can have teachers come up, like I do in the beginning of the year, like, what are some tools that we're going to come up with in our classroom to help us when we're in the red zone? And so when you do have a child in there, you can have them reflect on what you guys came up with and problem solved, and they can use those tools. Or a calming place in your classroom is amazing to have when kids have like high intense feelings, and that's great, like a calming corner. Do any of you guys have any of that in your classrooms?
Yep.
So those are great. And just integrating these skills, like in like even in like character books. So it's really getting kids to learn like what are emotions, and also our brain really learns when we're connected or we're interested in it. So you can in books you read, like, how do you think that character is feeling and why, and have you ever felt that way? How did that character model resilience skills and things like that? Can you relate to a story like that? And getting kids to really engage. Also more student-led activities, getting kids to like engage more for social skills. That builds like teamwork, and that helps them build those social skills needed.
Tabatha, I'm listening to you, talk, and I'm thinking about, the trainings that we've gone through for our most at-risk and vulnerable young adolescents. And, we talk about products that are out there like Brain Gym and other types of mindfulness activities to help them process and align the left side, right side, and stimulate blood flow. And Dean, I think you're onto something, man. We could really do a serious session on brain-based learning and go down the line and go down that road. We've heard you talk a lot about kids and students. In terms of educator well-being, what is it that schools and districts can do to help support the emotional well-being of the educators and the professionals in the schools? We always talk about self-care being important, and put your oxygen mask on before you have to help the person to the other side when you're on the plane. How do we build that capacity in our schools and in our districts in a smart, progressive way?
Yeah. So what I always start with is an EQ assessment for the educators. So the EQ assessment will tell you, it's kind of like a personality test, but it's how your brain works. And the assessment, I have all the like principals and teachers take it, and it'll show you, does your brain automatically focus on rational data or emotional data? And then I give some tools how to integrate, both sides of your brain. For example, if you walk into a meeting, is your brain automatically focusing on the agenda or how the tables are seated? Or does your brain automatically focus on the moods in the room? And, the assessment will tell you. And that's just a great way for self-awareness for our teachers to know like how their brain works. So we always start from there. So then I do activities like, if you're a rational thinker, and 90% of the people you work with or students are, on the emotional side, how does that impact your relationship with them? Also, the assessment will give you your strengths and areas you need to grow in. And that's just a great way to strengthen your emotional intelligence. And then what I help them do is practice tools to practice emotional intelligence every day. And it's those 5 steps to rock the F word feelings. So the first thing is I help teachers like practice, naming their emotions throughout the day, and really focus on like how they're feeling and how other people are feeling, and do like a body, mind, heart scan, like a mind scan. Are they talking to themselves like they would a loved one? Because we're really, negative self-talk can really sabotage us. And, also I help teachers really identify their triggers and what puts them in those 3 Fs. And that's so important for teachers to take some time to learn. So it's really just giving them some tools to help with that. So also creating like a coping toolbox that's going to help them go from stress to calm. So those are all things that I work with the leaders to work on themselves first, and that really helps them strengthen their emotions with better and healthier ways. And so that way, taking care of themselves throughout the day so they can take care of their loved ones and their students is important. So
embedding SEL in every curriculum in every class is something that we as instructional leaders are thinking about, and it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, we're caught under scope and sequence and rushing to try to get every standard covered that we have to in order to prepare our kids to be the best they can be academically. However, if you stop and think about it for a second, if you're not balanced and you're not in a good place, that race is all for nothing. Let's talk a little bit about how to bring SEL into all classes for a short period of time, and what that looks like with or without a curriculum.
So without a curriculum, so we shared you can use characters in the stories, really just, explain how the actions, the sequence of events, ask them about their feeling and emotional words, having feeling words in the classroom with posters, or say, you can do play emotion charades, have kids, imitate different emotions and act it out. Or you can have kids come up with pros and cons of different emotions that they feel. Or test anxiety is pretty huge in school. So you can have kids really talk about their emotions they feel. I know my son going into high school, and why I started practicing emotional intelligence myself, he had test anxiety that led to having anxiety attacks at school. And so I had to learn too, what was causing it and help him with tools, because he would just, that flight took over and went in the bathroom, would have anxiety attacks. So it's really helping kids understand when they're stressed, these things happen, and talk about it and come up with tools during test times, what they can do, and teachers allowing those conversations in the classroom and kids coming up with different strategies that can help them. That's so important.
Can you dig a little deeper into test anxiety strategies? Just for an example, I can recall giving a state standardized test at the end of the year, kids just crying because they feel the pressure that they have to do well on this. And that's just one example. I mean, regular assessments within a classroom, the anxiety can still become overwrought for kids. So talk a little bit about some tricks that you would give, maybe that you gave to your own son, on how to deal with these things, but that can be a good takeaway here.
Yeah. So some of the tips is just learning some breathing techniques, and that's huge, and that decreases anxiety. And we had to learn so many. I remember, there's different breathing ones, but it's helping kids learn some different breathing techniques, and teachers to incorporate it in the classroom, before test, and tell the kids the benefits of it, and model it and have them practice it. It can even, I always like just the 5-5-5, which, you breathe in deep, you breathe in you're breathing, smelling a flower, and then breathe out like you're blowing out a candle. And just having kids do that is so powerful. And the main thing is just talking to kids, what is really causing all these feelings, and then having the teacher help them, because a lot of them think they're not going to get into college, or when you're stressed, you have kind of some distorted thoughts. So it's really just kind of busting all of that, and that just relieves so much anxiety. I know with my son, it's well, that's not true, you're going to get in college, you're going to be fine, but they don't feel that way. So those are some things. So breathing techniques is huge. And just being able to have the kids come up with different things that worked for them. What worked for you before when you had these feelings and you were able to work through the discomfort of those feelings is very powerful. Just reminding kids their strengths. How can you use your strengths to work through this? I love giving kids, one of the things I'm certified in is the EQ assessment, so you can find out your strengths. But a free one you guys can do that is so valuable. What I always suggest for kids is that VIA character strength assessment, and it gives you your strengths, and that's amazing for kids to learn and help them use their strengths for dealing with some heavy emotions, especially test anxiety.
What are
Was
some
that
other
helpful?
what are some other stressors that kids deal with? I mean, stress comes in a myriad of different platforms. You know, obviously you got test anxiety, but you can have
Yeah.
relational anxiety. There are a lot of things. What else, what other things should we be looking for as educators to be able to help kids navigate?
Yeah, I would say like loneliness and isolation and is a huge one. Like kids are always worried, like especially right now transitioning, they haven't been back to school and they're like, okay, I haven't even seen my friends in so long. So for schools, it's just really maybe doing some events to get kids kind of socially connected. Some, you know, student-led activities is really helpful, like coming up with like a project base where kids can work together to kind of ease some of that right away, and just allowing some time for that social environment is so key. You know, especially at lunch, just kind of making sure like to focus our kids eating by themselves or, you know, doing things like that to make sure like they're connected and not alone is very helpful. Because kids are always like worried about like, do they have someone to sit with? Do they have someone to talk to in class? You know,
Yep.
so that's a main one. Do you guys have? I'm sure you have a lot of that in
There's a
your
lot of that.
school.
Oh,
You know,
without
Yeah,
a doubt, and we sit down and we think about, you know, how, all of these different experiences that kids have are interpreted very, very differently depending on their, well, A,
yeah.
comfort level, B,
yep.
actual experience,
Mm-hmm.
C, family circumstances, and then D, developmentally. They're all over the map, especially in
Yeah.
middle school. So having a common language to really introduce the
Mm-hmm.
positive self-talk with, and how do we identify the elements of emotional intelligence and
Yeah.
feelings language, aligning those two sides of the brain. I love the thinking brain, feeling brain, kind of merge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is all
Yeah.
intriguing to me. And when I go out to dinner with my family, I've got 3 kids, and
Yeah.
they're younger than Dean's, but he has experienced the same thing. And you've got 4 kids. There are some families that actually have conversations at dinner, and there are others where everybody's got a
Yeah.
device in their
I am.
hands. We happen to be a family that has a balance of the device, the conversation, and the Uno cards at the pizza table.
Yeah.
So how do we work with parents and other caregivers to first off address their own kind of EQ and SEL needs, but then how do we integrate that conversation into the parenting side of things to get them more adept at the parenting side of culturing SEL and EQ with their families?
Yeah, well, your example is great. Just there's so much studies that just families that eat dinner together every night just connects, you better. And so, like I always say, like if you can, and I know with sports it gets difficult with us too, but I try to make sure, like eating dinner together is huge. But for me, with families, how I support them too is just really helping them validate their kids' feelings and talk about emotions. We're, as parents, we want to fix our kids' problems instead of really helping them build the resilience skills. So like even with my son, when all of that happened, he was like in some accelerated classes and AP classes. And my first thought was like, let's just get you out of there. They're too hard. Instead of like, helping him develop more of the resilient skills. And then I had to like stop, like, no. So really just helping your kids learn some resilient skills and learn their strengths and have them tap into their strengths more to work through some of those tough emotions. But I also think it's so great to have like an emotional wellness plan in your house, like integrating those zones of regulations in your house. plan for, like you plan for fires, you talk about it, or you plan for vacations, plan for emotional fires. Like, when you're upset, like, I don't want to, talk to you in the red zone. It's gonna, we're going to say things we don't mean. Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? What are our coping tools? So like for me, my kids, even in COVID, we had some zones we went to, and we had we had communications when we got to that level, what to say to each other. So we just stop and can go in our room to wash our face, to cool off, so we're not hijacked by the 3Fs. So it's really just sitting down with your family and talking. Like, emotions are part of being human. Angry is healthy, but let's do it in a healthy way, and kind of set those expectations with your family. What's going to happen when we're upset, and doing check-ins with them, and just like really helping your family understand how do you want to feel, and how can we align our actions to feel that way is so powerful too. And talk to our kids about negative self-talk, how that sabotages our happiness, and how our thoughts create our behavior. So if you feel like you're not good enough, or you feel like, however you feel, really helping them reframe their self-talk by, how would you talk to your little brother? You wouldn't if they felt that way. Like, really helping them shift their talk, I think, is powerful.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you mentioned grit and resiliency, because, we don't talk about them enough. We get caught up in the feelings, and we understand it. We see the feelings every single day. We're looking at school improvement plans now, having multiple SEL competencies embedded within our planning of moving forward, because it's extremely important, and we've got to find a way to get that done. And it's going to take people like you, who are professionals in that field, to be able to advocate out to schools, to administrators, teachers, just tricks of the trade that work. And, understanding kids. And Chris and I sit in a seat where we have kids between the ages of 10 and 14, and they spin on a hamster wheel every single day. And we love them to death. But in 5 minutes, the emotions can swing the other direction. So understanding that and trying to help kids maneuver through is a very, very big thing that we have to all be able to be good at.
Yeah, and a lot of schools, I've helped them like bring in like journaling in their schoolwork they can do during advisory time, and help them with like some journal prompts, just transitions from coming in from recess, just to calm. So much happens in recess too. There's so much like stress levels. So it's like, when you come in, let's just put some calming music down, like even 10 minutes, breathing techniques. I always help them with some different ones, but that is so powerful too. And it just helps kids reflect on their emotions, so they can be set up for the next learning activity, is very powerful too.
Movement, brain breaks, anytime you can get those kids coming together, all those things are vitally important. I love that AJ and Josh are chiming in, our individual principals that join us on Saturday morning. They are leaders in their buildings, so they too are all over this stuff, and everybody's talking about it. Post-COVID is going to be interesting to see which way we go and how we can service not only our kids, but also our staff members, ourselves, and our caregivers and parents that are out there. It's just something that's so important.
It is. And I'm so glad that you guys are really taking this seriously and understanding the value. And, schools that really set up for that safe environment, academically, kids do better, and just that connection, they feel safe, so they're learning, and you don't have as many behavior problems. It's so powerful. And so and especially, I think, like for me, I really try to help the educators also to have some coping skills under their tool belt, and just really exploring what works for them to help them with stress. What do they need to be supported? And so that's really powerful, is just, schools investing in personal development for these types of trainings for their teachers is so needed. I love just the EQ assessments that we do, because it also gives you like your brain style out of 8, and that teaches teachers like what their brain style is and who they work with. And that's also a way that they understand how their brain works, how their emotional intelligence works, and how they work better with kids. And kids can do the same with these EQ assessments as well. So those are really powerful.
Chris, before you go, I always say it starts with hello and meeting a child at the door and making sure there's a real solid relationship. The rest then begins to build after that. And without those initial connections, nothing comes to fruition. Not in our business.
I love it. And like greetings is huge. And then to me, that's just like the number one thing is like coming in, having like the teacher out there greeting, but then really kind of tuning into like the moods of the child, their body language, you know, sensing if something's going on is so important. And that's why I love the emotion check-ins. You know, teachers just like will have the kids either, if they have a feeling wall poster, they can kind of put how they're feeling. Or they do it in their morning meetings and they talk about like, you know, how they're feeling and some strategies to shift to a different zone. And that's so powerful. Even having kids come up with different strategies to shift their moods is powerful. But just that connection is so needed when you first come into the classroom and in transition to between classes after recess and before they go home.
Yeah, this is so important. You know, this is about not necessarily an add into the classroom. This is about just experiencing life in the classroom and having conversations about it in addition to the curriculum. And, you know, as we talk about building relationships and, you know, you talk about your program that you created, Thrive in EQ. Thriving in emotional intelligence is work without a doubt, but it's all within us. It's within our grasp. And we certainly can be successful with it by having these types of conversations, acknowledging the ideas that brain-based learning is exceptionally important, aligning the thinking and the feeling portions of the brain. And Tabatha, you brought a wealth of knowledge to us in a very brief amount of time. I see some great promise in having this discussion at a higher level. You know, we've done a lot of work in our navigating leadership about self-care and emotional intelligence and social emotional learning. Certainly down the road, I think we'll be coming back to this topic at the level of brain-based learning for adolescents, so we can really take a look at the science and some real practical ways that we can address some of those needs. But hey, we're about out of time tonight, Tabatha. You know, on behalf of Dean and myself and the Unlock the Middle platform, thank you so very much for joining us. Really, you brought a wealth of knowledge and information to us tonight. We look forward to connecting with you and expanding your PLN on Twitter. Hey, everybody
on Twitter, that's right. How do you follow?
Tabatha is now on Twitter. She's a newbie to the Twitterverse. Tabatha Marden 3 is her tag. Be sure to follow her and reach out about her Thrive in EQ program and all the other amazing work that she does with educators, families, and of course, students. Everybody, it's Sunday night. Be well out there and just have a blast. Those of you who are on spring break like us, please take care of yourselves before you're taking care of others, but have fun in all that you do. Be well, everybody. We are out of here.
Have a great night.